Hey, this is Joshua with a new review coming at you with a new review on a lost gem. And I define lost gems as TV shows that were either on for too short a time and were canceled or were on for a long time and then naturally ended. And this one is of the latter. It is MASH. MASH followed the escapades of the 4077 during the Korean War. And what I liked about the series is that it started out kind of goofy. I mean, it was a little bit of a satire against the Vietnam War when it first came out, but over time, the satire just the protest against the Vietnam just got more and more prominent, and it focused a lot more. It became kind of like comedy drama as time went on, and to me, that was good because yeah, you needed to laugh and you needed something to take your mind off of the horrors of war sometimes. And that's what MASH did. It sometimes took us off our minds off the horrors of war that our characters were living through. Granted, they weren't frontline combat soldiers, but uh, 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 the the unit they were with was very close to the front line, and it worked to save as many frontline soldiers as possible. And they knew that they could see those kids again. And that was a theme that came up a lot, that these were young guys that they were operating on. And even of all the characters to one extent or another, except Ferret Face Frank Burns, realized that the war wasn't good. That granted, Colonel Potter loved the army, but he understood that war wasn't necessary. Winchester, he came from a family that during the Vietnam War would have gotten their kid out of being drafted, and Hawkeye and uh, uh, BJ and Trapper kind of came from a similar socioeconomic status as me, middle class, fairly well educated, but they didn't have the same resources to dodge the draft as Winchester would have. And the fact that these characters had a more realistic and nuanced understanding of the world as opposed to what a lot of characters probably did at the time, I think was very refreshing. And I'm watching this 30, 40 years later. I actually, a couple years ago, watched the entire series, all 10 seasons, and I want to say in about a month. And I'd seen a lot of MASH episodes. MASH is one of my favorite shows of all time. And it helped contextualize war for me because I've grown up in the longest war America's ever been in, the War on Terror. And like I said, this helped me contextualize war as a whole. Granted, it's not the same thing entirely, but it's something that I think was necessary, and I don't know if we'll ever get another show like it again. Um, and some issues I did have with it was that it seemed to focus more on Hawkeye than it focused on any of the other characters, and it was billed as an ensemble show when it first came out. And the fact that Alan Alda took over so much kind of detracted from it a little bit, I think. But overall, it was a great show. And one of my favorite episodes of all time was the episode where he wrote a will, which and the episodes where it took the perspective of a single person and showed the worlds from that character's perspective, I think was very effective. Like the episode where we're looking at it from the perspective, literally first person perspective of a wounded soldier. Another great episode was the uh, Dear Freud episode by Sydney, where where Sydney is writing letters to Sigmund Freud, talking about the 4077th. Um, those character study episodes, to me, really showed a lot of a lot of depth in how these characters worked. Another problem I had was the timeline was kind of off. The show lasted for 10 years, which was about 3 times longer than the Korean War was, because that was a 3-year war from 1950 to 1953. But when the last season was winding down, it definitely kind of synced up with the end of the Korean War, even though technically it hasn't ended. Um, but the actors felt it was time to move on, and to be honest, I understand it. It's a lot to do the same show for a decade. So yeah, this is Joshua with new review on the Lost Gem of MASH. Well, I'll see you later.